And in the last class I discussed most of the things related to file. For directories, it's almost analogous or everything, because a directory is just a special type of file. We have, but we have special system calls for directories also, like make dir, open dir, and read dir. There is no write dir because directory is written by the file system itself. The user cannot directly write into the content of a directory file. The directory file is updated by the file system itself. So the file system does not provide any system call for the user to update the content of the directory. It manages the content of the directory itself. The file system itself manages that. So you can you can read the you can use the directory content, read the directory content, that is allowed. In fact, the ls program that we do basically does that. It basically reads all the listings in the directory and just put out the information of what all there is in the directory. And I had a program in the book is given that I had that program, but later on I'll show if, but it's very simple program, you can read from the book. So I want to move to the next topic basically, which is the implementation of the file system, how we implement it. And this is more important topic, I think. So because this is going to give you the mental model of how file system works. It's basically, as we have said, it's basically a software interface that OS provides to our disk. So disk is just a raw array of sectors. Earlier we have seen we can logically see disk as a large array of blocks actually. So sector we had seen, normally sector is 512 bytes, and the hard disk manufacturer guarantees basically that whenever you do a read and write, you have to minimally read one sector. So one sector is the smallest unit that you can read or write from the file from the disk. But normally when we create a file or something like that, instead of working with sectors, we work with, the file system works with block. And block is basically some multiple of sectors. So normally, generally it ranges from 2 kilobyte to maybe 32 kilobyte and so on. So it can be like, so if it is 2 kilobyte, that means it will be having at least 4 sectors in it. So it basically, because 512 bytes may be small enough, so it basically, the file system divides the disk into blocks, which is basically some multiple of our basic sector. So when we are discussing files, we'll be talking about blocks rather than sectors only. So the idea is now that you have, let us say your disk is divided into a large array of blocks. Maybe in this case, I will just shown 64 blocks. Now we want to ask questions. Let us say we want to create files and directories in this disk. How does the file system basically manages that organization? Which blocks to be assigned to which file, where the metadata information should be stored, and how to read and write those contents in an efficient manner. So all those questions basically are addressed when the OS designer basically came up with the file system implementation. And that is all what we want to basically discuss in today's class. And there are two things which are important to understand in the implementation of file system. One is the basic data structures that will be used by our file system software to organize the content of a file and its metadata. And these data structures, when we are saying data structures, these are not memory data structures, but on disk data structures. So the data structures that will be used on the disk itself to manage the files and directories that are stored on the disk. And so again, depending on what type of data structure we use, there will be some pros and cons for using that, and that we will discuss today. First part of our class will be that various types of allocation methods and data structures to represent files on the file system. And then once we have understood that thing, then we will see how these different system calls, when we try to access a file or a directory in a OS, how those methods basically use those data structures basically in order to read or write from a file efficiently. So that will be our second part of the today's discussion. Okay, so the first part, as we have to first answer that we want to give, is how file system allocate blocks to files. So that is the first thing that we'll try to understand. Given a large array of blocks, how different blocks will be allocated to files. And you will find a striking similarity to how we basically allocated memory, virtual memory. Because in virtual memory also the principle is same basically. There we had a physical RAM, and then we basically, for each process, we have given a virtual address space, and then we had to map those virtual address spaces to the physical RAM. So physical RAM was also an array of bytes basically. So it was a byte addressable thing. So now disk, we are saying it's a block addressable disk or a sector addressable disk. So the physical resource is again similar to the RAM. You have an array of blocks or bytes or whatever, and you can see processes as files. Now files, there are now going to be multiple files on your OS, and how you are going to use your RAM or your disk now in this case to basically store the contents of files. So you have to have some mapping method, some way to organize this. So files are your abstraction. Now in your file system, file is your abstraction and disk is your actual physical resource. In the previous case, and memory was your actual physical resource, and your virtual address space was the abstraction. And we saw different methods like base and bound segmentation, paging, multi-level paging, all those ways by which we could map our virtual address space to the physical address space. So something similar will go here also. So I hope the basic similarity you can appreciate, and let us just without spending more time, let us try to see some allocation strategies that have been used in different operating systems from the early days to the modern days operating system. So these are some, this topic is not given in Ranji's book. He directly jumps to the actual multi-level indexing methods, which is used in modern Linux-based method OS like Mac and Unix, Linux, and all those, Ubuntu. He does not talk in detail about all other things. So this content I have taken from different books. He talks about them, but in small patches in different locations. But here I've basically summarized all of them. So there are different approaches that can be taken for allocating our files to our disk, and we'll go cover one by one. But while we discuss these methods, we'll answer these following questions, because the advantages and disadvantages of each of these allocation methods can be thought of by asking these questions. So we should ask how much fragmentation will be there if we use one of these approaches. So fragmentation, earlier this was one of the major problem when we were mapping our virtual address space to physical address space. So many of the techniques were causing internal or external fragmentation. So same thing will happen here also. So a fragmentation is basically the amount of free space that gets wasted, that cannot be used. So how much fragmentation will occur? So the approach which avoids both internal and external fragmentation will be more suitable. Similarly, we have to see how much flexibility we'll have to grow our file over time. So once we have stored a file, we would like to continuously grow it in future. So we should have a lot of flexibility in order to expand that file. And then we'll have to see, these are also very important in terms of the performance, because disk is going to be very costly, disk IOs. So we have to see how much speed we can get if we are doing a sequential access versus random access. So if we are randomly accessing different parts of the file, or if we are reading the file from the beginning to the end, how these approaches will perform in terms of speed. And then we have to see how much overhead will be there in terms of wasted space. So while we are using these approaches, some metadata informations will be needed, and how much space overhead will be there in storing that metadata. So metadata is anything that is not the actual content of your file, which is not the content that user has specified. So anything that OS needs to store in order to track the file. And then finally, also we have to see about the reliability of each approaches, because if there is some corruption of some particular data block or sector, what happens? Does we lose the entire file or not? So all those questions we have to ask while considering the pros and cons of each approach. One thing also I want to mention, in unlike memory and CPU virtualization, where we had to use some kind of a hardware support for achieving better efficiency in our supporting memory and CPU virtualization, here we won't explicitly need that kind of a hardware support for implementing our file system. Although, as we have earlier said, file system implementation will be kept is designed the design will be decided based by keeping in mind the underlying hardware, which is our disk or or our flash based storage, whatever the underlying storage device is there. The strategy should be designed according to the characteristic of that underlying hardware. So we have seen, for example, random accesses in disk are very expensive, whereas sequential access can be fast. So all those things have to be kept into mind while designing these strategies. But explicitly, like earlier, we used traps, interrupts, and so many other things, atomic instructions, and all those. In this case, fortunately for file system, we don't need that much hardware support to implement this file system software. So one of the simplest idea of allocation, as we have seen, it's can be a contiguous allocation, where let us say we have three different files A, B, and C. We have this array of blocks in our disk from 0 to n-1. Basically, we find a contiguous space for every file in the disk and allocate the file like that. So file A will get this space, B here, and C this here. So what will be the metadata information for each file in this case? What does the OS needs to store in order to keep track of the location of these files in the disk?
Base and bound.
Yeah, so it's, as you have very quickly observed, it's similar to base and bound approach that we have seen. So we have to store the base address, the starting block number of the file, and the length. So the starting block and the length or the size of the file. So the metadata will be just the starting block and the size of the file, or the number of, basically. So just almost same as base and bound approach that we have seen earlier, and it was used in very early operating systems, of course, which did not survive long. But because it has a very lot of disadvantages, we'll answer them by answering these questions. So mainly we have to basically, the main problem with this is we have to find sufficient free space for each file in a contiguous location, and then we must, so that means we have to have some idea about how much future size of the file can grow, and or should we reserve extra space keeping in mind the future size and all that. So all that has to be there. So we know all the disadvantages of an array based or contiguous allocation. So same thing will be here. So fragmentation, if you consider the fragmentation issues, it will be horrible external fragmentation, because we have seen either we have to allocate a very large size, we have to do an overestimation, or we have to basically, so if we have allocated space, and now we may have spaces available, but now if we need maybe 3 plus 4 plus 5, maybe need 6 maybe need 5 blocks file, but we don't have, although that much space is there, but we don't have that in a contiguous location. So we will have to periodically do disk fragmentation. So earlier OS probably every now and then would require disk fragmentation if they use this kind of an approach. So that is the main problem with this. And again, say for the same reason, we may not be able to grow file. So let us say A wants to grow or B wants to increase, add even one more byte, but there is no free space available. So now we have to do again a compaction kind of thing. We have to find a sufficient space somewhere, copy all the content there and so on. So we have to move the entire file to a new location. But it has many things good. For example, for sequential access, the seek cost or the rotation cost will be very less. Will file always be a multiple of sectors and blocks? Yes. So as we have said, file system will always, the file may not be always a multiple of sectors and block, but the file system is going to always allocate space to file in multiples of blocks. So in the last class I showed you stat. If you do a stat on a particular file, you will see how many blocks it has assigned to it. So even if your size is maybe using just 2 bytes or 3 bytes, still it will allocate one entire block. So there will be a trade-off. That's why block size can be from very small to maybe 1 kilobyte or 2 kilobytes, or it can go to 32 kilobytes. Having a larger block size has some advantages. Having a smaller block size has some advantages. Smaller block size will reduce the internal fragmentation, but that will also be there, as you have identified, Hardik. Yeah, internal fragmentation will be there, because anyhow problem is disk also has a minimum thing. Disk anyhow, if you have to read anything, it will not going to read just 1 byte, unlike memory, which is byte addressable. Disk minimally is sector addressable, so at least you need to read 1 sector, and reading 1 sector and reading 4 sectors is almost same basically. Although yeah, so reading in terms of read and write thing, it makes better sense to have a larger block rather than having a smaller block files.
Sir, there is a method called stop and copy where after some time compaction occurs like periodically. Basically, it stops the processing and copies all the files to a certain place where compaction occurs and garbage collection occurs simultaneously.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so periodically OS itself may do, or user himself. For example, maybe in these earlier OS, user himself would find that now my system is performing very poorly, so he may himself initiate a disk fragmentation. So OS may also schedule it, or the user may have to do it. But anyhow, this approach is almost useless because of these reasons. So none of the modern or even older operating systems use this approach. Very early OS may have tried this approach, but so we'll see, this is not useful for us. There are much better realistic strategies and data structures. So we'll spend more time there, but let us just see what are the advantages and disadvantages. So advantages, it's good for sequential access because all the data of the file is laid out in a sequential manner. So whenever you have to read, basically the rotation and the seek time will be minimized. So it will have excellent IO performance. Random access is also easy because the start and the offset. You can directly fetch that particular block from the disk. So you can do very simple calculation to get the address or the block number for the random accesses also. And metadata is also very minimal. You just need the starting block and the size of the file. So these things are good, but these two major disadvantages makes it very prohibitive for any real operating system. So what can be done? What improvement? So one approach people early OS did. So like earlier from base and bound we went for segmentation approach, where we had, instead of having just one big contiguous chunk, we'll have multiple segments, and each segments can be stored at different locations. So something similar, which is called extents, to have multiple contiguous regions, which are called extents, number of extents per file. So per file you will have 3, 4, or 6 extents, which you can have at different locations. So for example, here file D has one extent here, another extent here. File B has one extent here, another here, another here, and so on. A has these two extents, C has these two extents. So this will help. This will help little bit in terms of. So what is the metadata will be needed? So just like earlier for segmentation, for every segment we needed the starting and the size of the segment. So similarly, for each extent, we'll have to store the starting block and the size, and we'll have to have some kind of an array of to store those things, so that will be stored. And it will help in external fragmentation, but does not completely avoid it, as we have seen earlier. Also, it allows you to grow the file to different locations, but again, still you need there is a limit to it, because you may have to fix the number of extents, because depending on the array size, and you cannot go beyond that. So once you run out of that, you cannot grow beyond that. And the major problem in this, I have not written out here, is free space management. So earlier we have seen segmentation when we go for a variable size allocation, the free space management becomes very cumbersome. When you have to find a new, when you have to allocate a new space or deallocate and all that, the free space management becomes a lot of overhead. How do you actually allocate the extent? Yeah, the same thing. So the free space management becomes a very much problematic here. And again, this is not used in the modern OS, so I'm not going to go delve into that much detail. How do you do that thing? But that is going to be a problematic in this case. You have to basically, you have to maintain some kind of a list. So that depends on how you maintain, how do you do free space management. So earlier for memory, we have seen we can maintain a free list and then a linked list kind of thing, and then do all those things. Or we can use some more intelligent data structures to do that. But that is going to be a cumbersome task. So that is going to be a major disadvantage with this. But other things are still good. You have still a good sequential access, because each segment is contiguously laid out. So you can get a good performance for that. Random access is also same advantage here. Here also still we can easily calculate the offset for particular block that you want to read randomly. So the calculation is easy. You, of course, you cannot avoid the underlying random access from a disk is always going to be expensive. You cannot avoid that underlying fact. But apart from that underlying fact, even from the organization, the way you are organizing the files, how if you, to calculate the actual location of that disk, of that block in the disk, that should not be very cumbersome. So in this case, that is very easy to calculate which is the block from which you are, what is the block number where that data is residing. So if you want to do that, that offset calculation will be very easy, because still here you are doing some kind of a contiguous allocation. And metadata is again not big, it's still small overhead. So there are still some good things, but because of all these problems, free space management and these problems have not been completely overcome. This is also not some of the very early, I think maybe Linux, Unix or systems may have used some of these technique, but no more it is seen in any modern OS. So if you want flexibility in terms of avoiding fragmentation and being able to grow file over time, two things we have to use. One is you have to have fixed size blocks like pages. Earlier we have seen after segmentation we went for paging. So in order to avoid free space management, if we keep fixed size blocks, small fixed size blocks, pages, it solved a problem of management it made the problem of free space management a bit easier. So similarly, we will like to have fixed size blocks, small size blocks, and and in order to be able to grow them and store them at any location, we can have a linked list kind of a data structure. So we should have a linked list of fixed size blocks. So an example is shown here. For example, the file D starts from here, one block, and then so of course at the end of each block there will be some metadata which will store the address of the next block. So this one stores the address of the next block here, this one stores the address of the next block here, and so on. So in this way, and the last one probably will store some -1 or some value which indicates the end of file. So the metadata, sorry. So metadata in this case will be the location of the first block, which is the head node kind of thing, and the additional space for containing the pointer to the next blocks or the address of the next block. So we need to store the address of the first block, and in each node, in each block, we need to store the address of the next block. So that will be the metadata, and some very specific OS which we don't heard, which have not heard their names, they did use this kind of strategy. So how does it helps? Let us see. Fragmentation issue. Now there is no external fragmentation because you can keep this. Now you can allocate at any location. And internal fragmentation is little bit, but that also depends. If you reduce the size of these blocks to small enough, you can reduce the internal fragmentation, also minimize it to the extent you can do. Beyond that, you cannot do that. So, but you can practically avoid fragmentation problem and management problem, and you can grow file to any as long as you have a block, free block in your disk, you can grow your file. So there is no limit, though no limit from the software side in expanding or growing your file over time. Sequential access is also it depends on the data layout. So if your files are incident, for example, for B, if you see the B, if anyhow they gets located in a contiguous manner, then if you have to do if you have to read this file sequentially, then still it will perform reasonably okay. But yeah, if the file is broken and scattered all around in the disk, then sequential access will not be good for that things. But the file system will try to, because we know the file system understands that we can get the best read and write performance if we allocate files in a contiguous location. So as far as possible contiguous locations available, the allocation will be done in such a manner that the as much as contiguous location can be given to a file, and beyond that anyhow it cannot do much. So it depends, finally it will depend on how the data gets laid out. So sequential access speed will depend upon that. Random access will be very much bad, ridiculously poor performance for random access, because let us say you have to access the last block of the file D. So you need to first read this block, then read this next block into the memory from the disk, then, because you cannot know the address of the next block before reading this block. So you'll have to do at least 1, 2, 3, 4, or in fact 5 disk reads basically in order to fetch the last block. So random access will be poor, ridiculously poor, because even before you know the address of the location of that block, you will have to do many disk reads to do that. And of course there is an overhead also which has slightly increased than the previous approaches, because now we are storing, for every block we are storing a pointer or address for next block. So it can increase if the file is scattered all around. But another very important disadvantage with this approach is reliability. Imagine if any one of the blocks goes bad, if one of the sectors here goes bad, especially the sector which basically is storing the address of the next block, then basically you lose the entire file. Then you cannot trace the remaining file. So if any one of the block basically gets bad, in any intermediate blocks in the file gets corrupted, you run the risk of losing the entire file. So that is a very serious disadvantage with this kind of a linked list allocation. So again, these are not realistic OS. These are not realistic strategies. We have to have some better strategies. And now we are going to see some better strategies. So for example, early Windows actually also use this kind of approach to have maximum flexibility. This approach has maximum flexibility, but the only problem is this reliability and this poor performance for random access. So early Windows basically, or the command based system, basically MS-DOS and all those, they basically use a simple trick to handle these disadvantages. What was that trick? Anybody knows that? How can you overcome these problems using a very simple trick? So you may have heard of FAT file system. So before NTFS, for example, when we were using Windows earlier, in our most of time Windows partitions will be a FAT partition. Later on it came NTFS and now maybe other things. So this FAT is basically a variation of linked allocation strategy only, with just a slight trick. All this linked list information for all files, they store in a separate file which is called FAT table. So they have a separate FAT table, basically file allocation table, which basically all this linking information is stored there. So let us say D is starting at this location. This first block is and then this entry will store the address of the next block. This entry will store the address of the next block, and so on. Basically, this entry will store the address of the next block. And so for all files in the file system, there will be one single FAT table, which will basically be storing the linkages of blocks. So all the linkages of the block information will be stored in one FAT table, which will be stored as one file on disk. So the metadata now will be the location of first block of each file and this FAT table itself. So once we know the first block, then you can look into the FAT table to basically know the remaining blocks in that file. Is that clear? So this FAT table basically now is how it will help basically. So you'll have the basic same advantages, disadvantages, but for example, previously what you saw, this random access, because for doing the random access, for example, to know the last access, you have to do these many reads of each block. But now you don't need to do, because you can just, once you read this FAT table, and normally this FAT table is all cached in the main memory. So because this FAT table is one big FAT table for the entire files in your file system, or at least a portion of this FAT table will be cached in the main memory. So now you don't have to, in order to know the location of the last block of a particular file, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do a disk reads, because that information is already available in your memory in the form of the FAT table. And so that will greatly improve the random access. And also, if one of the block gets bad, still there is no problem, because you already have a copy of that information in the FAT table. Of course, you can say FAT table itself may get corrupted. So you can keep two FAT table. You can have two FAT table copies at different locations in the disk. You can have redundant copies. So reliability problem also can be overcome by using this FAT table. Only thing is now, to scale with larger file system becomes problem, because now, for example, earlier first FAT system used 16-bit entries. In each entry was a 16-bit entry. So it was called FAT16 basically in that case. And now with 16-bit entry and with a particular block size, you can calculate how much the maximum file size, you can calculate how much that can be accommodated by this. And that would be only in some MBs, maybe 250 or 512 MBs. So, or maybe, so for earlier systems, probably that was sufficient. So then it was improved to FAT32, which is basically enabled it to maybe more gigabytes of files can come. But again, those things so once you increase to this, then FAT table itself becomes very large. You cannot keep it in memory. So you'll have to only cache part of that. So there are some advantages and disadvantages of this. So again, now this is no more used in modern OS, although it did a good trick to address most of the problems, and it did work for earlier systems where you didn't need that much file, where the file size requirement was not that high, beyond few gigabytes. It could be managed. Is that clear? Any question till this point? So if you did not cache this fat in memory, then you had to do. Yes, Varun.
How does it improve random accesses?
Because now, see, the main problem in the simple linked allocation was, in order to know the address of the last block, you had to fetch previous blocks from the disk to the memory, because the addresses of the next blocks are stored in each consecutive blocks. Consecutive means in that linked list. So you cannot even calculate the address of the last block until unless you read the previous block, and this block cannot be known before you read the previous block. So you have to do a traversal, and multiple reads have to be done. But now multiple reads can be avoided because you can just read this fat table once. So this fat table stores this linkage information, and this fat table will be probably in one block of the disk, and that one block or maybe few blocks, so that block can be cached in your main memory. So now that that address information is already there in your main memory. You are no more you require disk reads to calculate the random offset in a file. So in that way, basically it improves the random access. Of course, the underlying cost of doing a random access of the disk cannot be improved. The rotation and seek cost and all those things, if you are worried about that we are not talking about here. What we are talking about here is the overhead at the software level itself. So before even you can issue a write request to the last block, you need to know its address, and with the previous method you cannot know the address of this before doing multiple disk reads. And in this case, you have basically using this fat table in the memory, you can do very simple calculation. You can very easily get to know the address of the last block, and that way it improves the random access performance. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So if you don't cache this fat is not there, or if there is a cache miss, basically because the fat table itself is very large. Because earlier, remember, even your page table, you cannot keep a cache of page table in your entire memory, because in your cache, because page table itself can grow large. So this is something like page table. This fat is something like that only. So if you cannot do that, then you have to do 2 disk allocations for every data read. You have to first you have to read the fat table from the disk, and then you will find the actual content. Just like earlier, we have to first read the page table entry, and then we can read the actual page. Same thing happens here, but if you are able to cache the fat table in your main memory, then it's good enough. So slight improvement over this, instead of having a big fat table for all the files in your hard disk, you can have that same indexing information independently for each file. So we can have one indexing location for file D, one index location for file A, and so on. So instead of having a big fat table, now you will have multiple fat tables for different files, but they are not called fat tables, they are called index nodes. The historical name that goes with this kind of index allocation is called basically index allocation. So now each file, the index node for each file will store the linkages information. So for example, for file D, basically you will have one index node, and so it will basically be storing the pointers for multiple blocks of that file. So the first block of the first pointer will store the address of the first block, then second block, and so on. So in this way, you will have multiple index nodes for each files for A, B, and C, and so on. So now you don't need a very big fat file table for all the files in the disk system. You have basically little bit simplified your problem. So the metadata will be this index node, which will nothing but fixed sized array of block pointers. Can you explain scaling again? You are referring to the fat thing. So scaling basically, so that's why. So fat have many different versions: fat 16, fat 32, and even before 16, I think there were fat 4 and so on. So when you have to scale it to a larger, so if you, let us say you have to handle a terabyte disk or a gigabyte or maybe even larger size disk, so there will be a problem because now this fat table is basically storing the information for the entire disk. So it gets so it does end into, it cannot scale very well for larger disk size. So that's why we are saying that instead of having that thing, better have this index allocation so that the scaling issue does not come. So you may have now gigabyte, terabyte, or even petabytes of disk. Now you don't need a big fat table for the entire disk. So instead of have for each file, you have a separate indexing information, and that indexing information will be stored in an index node for that file. So that will be the metadata for now. And again, it has the same advantages. Now no external fragmentation. Earlier files can be grown up to max file size. Now so it supports random access because this, once you fetch this index node and cache it into the memory, you can randomly know the address of any particular block of the file. Now how much file you can grow, that depends on the size of the index node. So if you have direct pointers, you will have some limit to how much size. So each file can have a maximum size, and that you can calculate depending on the number of pointers that you can allocate for each index node. So that will determine. So files can grow because now you can randomly use any particular locations. So on that can be as far as allocation is, there is no problem in allocating any random location to a file, but the maximum file size will be determined based on the number of disk pointers that an index node can store. So the disadvantage is that, so for example, if you want to support a very large file, then each index node you have to make a very large so that you can store a lot of pointers. But then that will have a wastage of space because most files that you store in your OS are not going to be big file size. Most file size are typically few kilobytes. But still, you may want to store occasionally one very big size of maybe gigabytes or terabytes. So how do you handle that? So you cannot have a very big index node in order to keep track of that at the cost of having for most of the file you will end up wasting that extra metadata information. So how do you improve that? So again, this is a very good trick to improve that, and this is one of the very good one of the most successful design in a computer science, or especially in operating system. And this design is used in most of the modern operating system file system. So this is the same thing. We are having an indexed allocation, index node for each file, but that index node, so that index node is called inode. If you remember the name, we have been using inode earlier. Inode for each, there is an inode for each file. So that inode is basically the short form of index node. So every file is going to have its one inode, and now instead of having a direct indexing, we'll have a multi-level indexing, just like in page table also. When the size of the page table was large, so in order to handle large page table avoid the wastage of space, we went for multi-level page tables. So something similar here, multi-level indexing will be done, but it is a little more intelligent here because the way they do it is quite very interesting. So for example, if you have, let us say, 8 or one inode has, let us say, in this case 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 disk pointers. So one inode can only support 8 pointers, or basically 8 addresses. So So they will reserve most of the upper. So let us say first 4, or maybe they will leave last 3. Not, yeah. So last 3 no, address pointers will be used for multi-level indexing, whereas the remaining will be used for direct addressing. So the idea of direct addressing is that because most of the file sizes are small, few kilobytes, so they will only end up using these direct addresses, and they will be accessed fast. So you will be able to handle most of these small sizes just by using these direct address pointers. But for files which are larger, we can go for indirect addressing. So after that, we have one level of indirect addressing. So one of them will store an address of an indirect block, which will in turn will store the direct addresses for the direct blocks. So if you can remember your page table things, multi-level page table things, something similar is being done here. So one of the address will store an address of an indirect block. So this block is again kind of an inode block, but in this case it is only going to store the direct addresses. And if that does not suffices, then you can use the second level of addressing, which is double indirect. So this will have two level of indirection. First, one inode block, which will have each one of them will store the address of an indirect inode block, and that will have the direct address blocks. And if that does not suffices, then you have a triple indexing. And that with this, you can, if you can calculate, if you are given that parameters, you can support petabytes of file. You will not run out of course, there is a limit to grid, and I don't know in future after 15, 20 years or 10, we don't know how much file sizes we may be dealing with. But of course, most of the files don't even need to go about double level of indirection. Most of them will suffice with single level of and maybe one level of indirection. The problem with this triple indirection, double indirection is that in order to fetch the data, the location of this, for example, this data block, you have to first read this inode, then you have to read this inode, and then you have to read this inode. So at least three inodes you have to read before you get the address of that particular node. So that's why for smaller files you get direct. For medium level size, you have to have one level of indirection, and for larger size you have to have this. And of course, these will get cached once you are dealing with them. These will get cached in your memory once you are reading that file, and so on. But I think it's a good intelligent design which does a nice trade-off of between small sizes and large size of things, and at the same time preserving all the advantages of and all the flexibilities that you needed for file system. So in most of the Unix-based file systems, fast file systems and all that, modern of them, they use this Mac and other things. Comparison to index allocation does not waste space for unneeded pointers. Still fast access for small size. Can grow to word size. It can go to petabytes. So as I said, we need to have multiple levels of indirections are there. So you need to keep those indirect blocks cached in main memory. So I think I explained all that. I did not went sequentially, but while explaining thing, I have explained it. Anybody has any question till this point? So we have covered most of the allocation strategies in modern OS, and so that completes our majority of the discussion today. Any question till this point, if anybody has not understood anything?